Bill Gates stepped out of the modest silver car and looked up at Seattle Central High School. The red brick building stood as quiet and familiar as it had 4 decades ago. The windows still shimmered under the soft northwest sun, and the wide stone steps leading up to the main doors looked exactly as they had in the 1970s. "This won't take long," Bill told his assistant Lydia, who stood nearby scanning her tablet. "I just want to walk through it one more time. No cameras, no staff, no distractions." Lydia hesitated. "You have a live Q&A at UW in less than 2 hours." Bill nodded. "Then I better move fast." The doors were surprisingly unlocked. School had let out for the day, but after-school programs were still running. The hallway was nearly empty. The familiar scent of waxed linoleum, old books, and dusty sunlight hit him like a wave. For a brief second, he was 15 again, skinny, bookish, slightly nervous, always out of place. He walked slowly, hands in his coat pockets, tracing the walls with his eyes. Here was room 104, his old science lab, and there was the library, where he'd once hidden during lunch breaks from the jocks who teased him. He paused outside the computer room and smiled. This was where he'd first written code. His very first software project was compiled in that cramped, noisy lab using a school machine most kids barely touched. As he turned down the corridor toward the science wing, a familiar sound stopped him. Squeak, drag, squeak. He peeked around the corner and saw an older man bent over a mop bucket, slowly cleaning up a spilled orange drink near the lockers. His movements were deliberate but labored, as if every step cost him something. Bill's eyes narrowed. That walk, that rhythm, that mop. "Mr. Vargas?" he asked almost involuntarily. The man turned. His face had aged, deepened lines, thinner hair, spots of gray, but his eyes, gentle and sharp, were unmistakable. "Well, I'll be damned," the old janitor said, straightening up and squinting. "Is that little Gates?" Bill chuckled as he walked forward. "I haven't been little Gates in about 40 years. But yes, it's me." Mr. Vargas leaned on his mop with a weary smile. "You always did walk around this school like your mind was somewhere 5 miles ahead. I knew those eyes anywhere." Bill's heart ached for a moment. This man, this quiet, unnoticed presence had been one of the few people who'd ever looked out for him during those long, lonely years. "You're still working here?" Bill asked, incredulous. Mr. Vargas nodded, wiping his brow. 52 years this summer. Same bucket, same mop, same floors. I'm part of the walls now." Bill did the math. If Vargas had already been working here when Bill was a student, then he had to be over 80. That's a lifetime." The janitor shrugged. "Some folks retire to a beach. Me? I'd missed the sound of locker doors slamming shut." They stood in silence for a moment. "You always used to clean the West Hall right after 6th period," Bill recalled. "Right when I'd come out of trig class. You'd give me that little nod, like you knew how much I hated being here." "I did," Vargas said. "Some kids were loud. You were quiet. But you always said thank you when I left a coffee outside the computer lab." Bill smiled. "I remember those coffees. I figured if a kid was going to save the world with code, the least I could do was keep his mug warm." Bill looked at the old man's hands. Swollen joints, bruised fingers. Every callus told a story. "You should be retired, Mr. Vargas. Enjoying your days, not scrubbing soda off tile floors." "Retirement's overrated," Vargas said. "Besides, the kids keep me young. In here, anyway." He tapped his chest. A bell rang faintly in the distance. "That's the robotics club. They'll be in the science wing any minute." Vargas turned to go. "But it's good to see you, Gates. You turned out all right." Bill stood still, watching him shuffle away. "Mr. Vargas," he called. The old man turned back. "Do you have time for coffee?" I'd like to catch up." There was a long pause. Vargas looked surprised. Then he nodded slowly. "For you? 20 minutes." Bill texted Lydia. "Reschedule UW talk. Something more important came up." When she replied, "They won't like it," he wrote back, "I'll deal with it. This can't wait." He pocketed his phone and leaned against the wall, watching Vargas disappear down the hallway with his mop and his limp. His mind was already racing. There had to be something he could do. But first, he just wanted to listen. He owed that much to the man who once saved him without ever asking for thanks. The things we throw away sometimes come back to save us. 20 minutes later, Bill Gates found himself sitting in a small, forgotten lounge tucked behind the school cafeteria. The lighting buzzed faintly. The furniture looked like it had survived 3 generations of students, and the coffee machine sputtered as if waking from a nap. Mr. Vargas handed him a chipped ceramic mug. "Still take it black?" he asked. Bill blinked. "You remember?" Mr. Vargas shrugged with a faint smile. "You stayed late back then. I brought you coffee more than a few times. Never asked why you were still here after dark. Just figured you had something important going on." Bill took the mug. The taste was stronger than he remembered, but comforting, familiar. "You never interrupted, never said much. But you always showed up," Bill said. "That was the job." "No, it wasn't." The old man sat across from him, slowly lowering himself into a faded chair with a quiet groan. He rested his cane nearby. "How old are you now?" Bill asked gently. "Turned 80 in April. My son in Melbourne sends me cake and complaints. Says I should be done by now." "Why aren't you?" Bill asked, truly puzzled. "You've earned your rest." Mr. Vargas looked out the window toward the field. A group of boys were tossing a football under the soft spring light. "This place is my rhythm. My routine. I know when the boilers need bleeding. I know which lockers stick and which ones never close. And I know which kids are pretending to be okay when they're not." He paused. "I'm not ready to let that go." Bill nodded slowly. "You know, I remember one day, maybe sophomore year, I got cornered by some seniors in the east stairwell. They took my bag, dumped my books in the trash, called me every name they could think of. I thought I'd throw up." "I remember," Vargas said without flinching. "I was mopping the math hallway. Heard them. Showed up with my mop bucket real casual. Said the principal needed to know who broke the bathroom mirror. They scattered like birds. I put your bag back together and left it by your locker." Bill blinked. "You never said anything." "Didn't need to. You were smart enough to know what that meant." They sat in silence for a moment. Then Mr. Vargas leaned forward slightly. "You know, I keep a scrapbook." Bill looked up. "A scrapbook?" he asked. The old man nodded. "Of students. Not names, just stories, observations, a sentence or two. When I see something special, or someone who needs a bit more care. Started it in '71, it's in my office." "You wrote about me?" "I did." "Can I see it?" Vargas hesitated, then smiled. "Later, if you promise not to laugh at my handwriting." Bill chuckled. "Deal." Mr. Vargas sipped his coffee and then winced slightly, rubbing his knee. "That's still bothering you?" Bill asked. "Old war injury," Vargas muttered. "Nothing dramatic. Just the cost of time. Doctor said I should have had it replaced 5 years ago. But you know, insurance covers a handshake and an aspirin." Bill's expression darkened. "You mean to tell me this school, after 52 years, can't afford to get you a working knee? They keep me on the payroll. That's more than a lot of places would. Principal is a good man." "That's not good enough," Bill said. Mr. Vargas gave him a long look. "You always had that fire in your belly," he said. "Even when your voice was soft, I could see it in your eyes. You looked at a problem like it was a math puzzle, something waiting to be solved." Bill leaned back. "This is more than a puzzle. You think you can fix everything?" "No, but I can start with one thing." Mr. Vargas tilted his head, studying him. "I didn't bring you coffee all those years because I thought you'd get rich," he said. "I did it because I thought you'd do something good. Something that mattered." Bill looked down at the black liquid swirling in his cup. "Then I better prove you right." Mr. Vargas stood slowly. "Come on. I'll show you the office. I think it's time you saw what I kept." As they walked slowly through the back corridor, Bill glanced at the scuffed walls, the cracked tiles, the rusted hinges that had never been replaced. But suddenly it all looked different. He was seeing the school not as it was, but as Mr. Vargas had preserved it, with small repairs, silent acts of kindness, and 52 years of care that nobody ever noticed. They reached a narrow door near the boiler room. Vargas fumbled with an old keyring and unlocked it. The room inside was barely wider than a closet. Cleaning supplies, a battered desk, a shelf lined with manuals, and on the wall, 2 framed photos, one of a smiling woman and one of a young man in uniform. "My wife, Maria, and me. Vietnam, 1967. He opened a drawer and pulled out a thick, leather-bound ledger. "This is it," he said, handing it over. "Be gentle with the pages. Some of those memories are older than you. Bill sat down and carefully opened the book. Inside were dozens, hundreds of entries, each one handwritten in neat small script. No names, just stories. Tiny windows into the lives of children he'd helped quietly, without applause. He flipped ahead. June 9th, 1975. Skinny boy with thick glasses. Stayed late again. Writing code on a machine that barely works. Looks like he's inventing something. Teachers say he talks too fast. But I think he's seeing a world they can't yet imagine. Bill froze. His hands trembled slightly as he turned to the next entry. October 14th, 1976. Boy's backpack found in trash again. Bullies are relentless. Sat by library window, didn't eat lunch. Left a warm cup of coffee on the desk and swept nearby till they passed. Bill closed the book. His voice was barely a whisper. You saw me. Mr. Vargas sat down beside him. Of course I did. Somebody had to. Bill didn't speak. He just nodded, staring at the ledger. This was more than memory. This was testimony. I never threw away your coffee, he said quietly. Not once. The next morning, Bill Gates didn't board his flight back to Redmond. Instead, he canceled 2 meetings, rescheduled a panel, and returned to Seattle Central High with a notepad in hand. This time with Lydia trailing behind him and a discreet camera crew waiting outside. Not for publicity, but to document something he wasn't quite ready to explain to the world. Nothing starts today, he told her. Today we listen. We learn. At the school, Mr. Vargas met them at the front gates, dressed in his usual janitor's uniform, his mop handle propped against the stair railing like a soldier's cane. You're back, the old man said, smiling. Most people visit their high school once and call it a day. Bill smiled. I've got a few more questions for my favorite teacher. They began walking together slowly through the school, but instead of showing off the polished halls and trophies in glass cases, Mr. Vargas led Bill down cracked stairwells, into utility closets, beneath leaking ceilings and into dusty crawl spaces. This vent's been busted since '97. I rigged a fix with coat hangers, he said, tapping a rattling duct with his knuckle. And that's a bucket catching roof leaks above the girls' locker room. Everywhere Bill looked, he saw decades of decay. But he also saw patches of care, wooden panels repaired by hand, doorknobs replaced with whatever had been available, broken desks repurposed into shelves. It wasn't just maintenance. It was preservation, survival. In the neglected workshop, Mr. Vargas paused, touching a hand-sanded bench. I come here on weekends. Built that table for the art teacher. She never knew it was made from old science lab cabinets. Bill touched the wood, smooth, solid, better than anything store-bought. You built all this, he asked. Fixed, salvaged, protected, Vargas said. You do what you can when no one else will. Bill leaned on the table, studying him. If you could change anything about this school, just one thing, what would it be? Mr. Vargas didn't hesitate. I'd make sure every kid knew how to fix things. With their hands. Not just test scores and book reports. Real-world problems. Broken locks, leaky pipes, a busted fuse. He looked at the workbench. You'd be amazed what confidence it gives a kid to fix something that was broken. Bill said nothing for a moment. Then, what if I told you I wanted to make that happen? Mr. Vargas raised a skeptical eyebrow. What do you mean? Bill pulled out his notebook. I'm launching a new education initiative. Labs for innovation and tech, yes, but also something more practical, physical, hands-on. I want students to learn how to build and repair, and think like engineers and caretakers. Mr. Vargas chuckled. That's noble, but you'll need people who know how to teach that. I've already got someone in mind, Bill said, locking eyes with him. The janitor looked stunned. Me? You know every inch of this school. You've mentored students longer than most teachers. You've lived the principles we want them to learn. But I'm not a teacher, he said quietly. And my knees... Bill raised his hand. Medical care comes first. Full replacement surgery, best doctors, paid in full, and a new role for you, building steward. It's not janitorial. It's mentorship, oversight. You teach students how to care for the spaces they occupy and for each other. Mr. Vargas sat on a nearby stool. For once, he looked overwhelmed. I don't know what to say. Say yes. The old man looked around the workshop, the tools, the dust, the sun slicing through the cracked window. And then, slowly, he nodded. "I'll need a new mop," he muttered. Bill laughed. "Only if you really want one." They stood together for a while, the silence rich with unspoken gratitude. Later that afternoon, they sat with Principal Hargrove in the main office. Surrounded by documents, Bill's team laid out a full renovation plan, updates to electrical, plumbing, roofing, and a full redesign of the workshop into what would be called the Vargas Innovation Center. The principal looked stunned. "This is incredible," he whispered. "And he's the heart of it," Bill said, gesturing to Vargas. "No one knows this school better." Mr. Vargas flushed red. "I'm just the janitor." "You're the reason I survived here," Bill said simply. "And I'm not the only one." After the meeting, as they walked the halls once more, Mr. Vargas said, "You really think students will want to learn this kind of stuff from an old man with a limp?" Bill smiled. "I think they'll be honored." The official announcement came 2 weeks later. A press release quietly hit the wires. Bill Gates pledges $50 million to launch the Vargas Foundation, a new initiative aimed at supporting overlooked heroes of education, janitors, cafeteria staff, and school maintenance workers, starting with a full-scale renovation of Seattle Central High School. But inside the school walls, the change wasn't just financial. It was spiritual. The science building was shut down for the first phase of demolition. The gymnasium was repurposed into a temporary lab space, but the real buzz came from the basement workshop, where something entirely new had begun, because Mr. Salvador Vargas, the janitor, with bad knees and calloused hands, was now standing at the front of a class. 12 students, 9th to 12th grade, all handpicked, all curious, all quietly surprised. "Welcome to Foundations," Mr. Vargas had said on day one, wearing a crisp gray jacket in place of his janitor's uniform. "We're going to learn how to make things and fix them, including ourselves." He started with simple things: measuring, using tools safely, understanding weight distribution. But he also talked about pride, about respect, about showing up early even when nobody sees you. "Tools don't care if you're rich or poor," he told them. "They only care if you're paying attention." Meanwhile, Bill Gates returned every Friday afternoon, quietly, without cameras or press. Sometimes he sat in the back of the class. Other times, he helped sand down planks or hold a screwdriver for a sophomore learning how to disassemble a desktop power supply. "They listened to him," Vargas whispered to Bill one day, pointing at a kid who hadn't spoken up in class in months. "But they believe me." Bill smiled. "Exactly why you're here." As weeks passed, the school transformed. Construction crews began rebuilding the science wing from the inside, guided by Mr. Vargas's detailed suggestions. Wider hallways, light-filled study nooks, modular workstations that could shift between robotics, carpentry, or chemistry with a few adjustments. And then came the day of the surprise unveiling. On a bright Thursday morning, the school auditorium filled with students, teachers, district officials, and a few curious journalists. Bill Gates walked onto the stage with Principal Hargrove, and Mr. Vargas sitting quietly in the front row, still unaware of what was about to happen. "I came back to Seattle Central," Bill began, "not to revisit the past, but to honor the people who made the future possible." He gestured toward Mr. Vargas. "There's a man in this building who changed more lives than any textbook ever did. He mopped the floors under our feet, but more importantly, he looked up and saw us, especially when we didn't know we needed to be seen." Mr. Vargas shifted, visibly uncomfortable with the attention. 6 months later, the Vargas Innovation Center opened its doors to the public, not with red carpets or celebrity fanfare, but with something far more powerful: curiosity. Hundreds of students from across the district came to tour the building, that now stood as both a modern tech lab and a living monument to quiet dignity. Bill Gates stood just outside the main entrance, watching as students filtered into rooms filled with 3D printers, soldering stations, drone kits, and workbenches built from reclaimed wood, designed by none other than Mr. Vargas. A soft voice interrupted him. "I brought something," Vargas said, holding a small worn box in both hands. Inside were dozens of folded pages, scraps of sketches, and tiny handwritten notes. "More of the memory book?" Bill asked. "No," Vargas replied. "These are the ones students gave me. Thank you notes. Drawings. One girl wrote me a poem after I fixed her locker." He chuckled softly. Didn't even rhyme. Bill looked down at the box. You kept all of them? They're my pension, Vargas said with a shrug. These are the moments that kept me going. They stepped into the problem-solving lab together. Inside, a small group of students was tinkering with an old bicycle, converting it into a pedal-powered generator. I didn't even assign this, Vargas said proudly. They came up with it themselves. As they watched, a teacher approached and whispered to Vargas that there was a student outside asking for him. A tall young man, unsure of himself, stood near the lockers. Mr. Vargas? The boy said. You might not remember me. I transferred in this year. I've been struggling. Grades, stuff at home, I didn't know where else to go. The old janitor nodded gently, placing a hand on the boy's shoulder. You came to the right place. Bill stepped back as Vargas led the boy into the workshop, showing him a simple wooden shelf that needed finishing. We'll start here, he said. You sand? I'll listen. And just like that, the quiet magic began again. That evening, the school hosted a small dinner in the library for staff, students, and community members. As dessert was served, Principal Hargrove tapped his glass. We have one last announcement, he said. An anonymous donor has arranged for Mr. Vargas, his grandchildren, to visit from Australia. Next month, all expenses paid. And going forward, a travel stipend will ensure he can visit them any time. Gasps, applause, a stunned expression from Mr. Vargas. Bill just smiled. But he wasn't done. After the clapping settled, he pulled a sealed envelope from his coat pocket and handed it to Vargas. What's this? The old man asked. Something I never thought I'd be able to give back. Inside was a legal document, a 5% equity share in a new energy patent derived from Bill's original. Teenage sketches, ones Vargas had saved from a trash bin. We used one of your saved ideas to re-engineer a power system we'd been stuck on, Bill said. That share will be worth a few million over the next decade. It's yours. Vargas opened his mouth, then closed it. He looked down at the paper, then back at Bill. I never kept those drawings for money. I know, Bill said. Which is exactly why you deserve it. That night, after the crowd had gone and the lights were dimmed, Bill and Vargas sat on the front steps of the school. The air was cool. The streets were quiet. You know, Vargas said, for most of my life, I didn't think I mattered much. Bill looked over. You mopped floors for 52 years and built a foundation under 1,000 futures. The old man smiled. Funny how the quiet ones make the loudest echoes. A long silence settled between them, the kind reserved for people who understand each other too well to speak. Then Bill reached into his bag and pulled out a small brass plaque. It read, This hallway cared for by Mr. Salvador Vargas, and this school would not be standing without him. He handed it to Vargas. Pick the wall. We'll mount it wherever you want. Vargas traced the words with his fingers, blinking a few times before whispering, East Wing near the science lab. I always liked that one. Bill nodded, and together, one man who'd once written the future in code, and another who had quietly preserved the past with a mop. They walked down the empty hallways, each step echoing with meaning.